A big part of what Vlad and I want to do here with RunLab is share what it's really like to train as an elite runner. Vlad's currently tapering for his A race, the Kosciuszko 100 miler, part of the UTMB World Series. And while most of us might never be chasing podiums at that level, there's still so much we can learn from how elites train. Today, we're looking at a type of training that's had a lot of attention lately, especially since Tom Evans and Ruth Croft took out UTMB, and that's weighted running for muscular endurance. You might have heard Tom, Ruth, or their coach Scott Johnston talk about this idea. For Vlad though, weighted workouts have been part of his toolkit for more than a decade, both in his own training and with the athletes he coaches. So today we're breaking down what it is, why it works, and showing how you can structure an effective uphill strength workout that doesn't hammer your joints. All right, mate, we're down at Trailhead again this morning. You're about to put me through my paces. Might be a bit of a tougher session for you though, because obviously today you're doing a weighted workout. Why is that something that you like to include in your builds, especially in the key parts towards races like Kosciuszko?
The reason I like it so much is because it's very functional and it really isolates those muscles and puts them under a further fatigue than you would normally be able to get, which is very beneficial. For
someone like me who's an amateur, I've always I kind of shied away from doing weighted training. I think just because obviously I've suffered from like knee pain occasionally, shin splints every now and then. Talk to me about the session that we're doing today and how that might sort of ease that concern.
Yeah, it's a very valid point, but the session that we're doing today, we're actually using the water dump method. So we'll be carrying weight up the hill. Today I've got my pack in total, which weighs 14 kilos. We're going to run, walk up this steep hill, but when we get there at the top, we're going to empty the water out and then come back without that extra load.
And also, I guess, worth pointing out, for anyone who lives in countries like Australia, where sometimes there's water restrictions, you can obviously do this responsibly. You're using water from your rainwater tank, is that right?
That's correct.
But yeah, just make sure that you're doing it in a way that is responsible and be aware of any restrictions in your area. Okay, so elite athletes like Vlad, they're great real-world examples of why this kind of training is effective. At the moment though, the science on the subject, it's still pretty light. There's only a few small studies. Not all of them are super relevant to the kind of training that we're doing. For example, one study did show that using weighted vests for strides in your warm-up actually resulted in a running economy benefit of about 6%. Another more relevant study, but also had a really small sample size, showed that training with a moderate weighted load actually did increase the athlete's lactate threshold. But exercise science, it's very messy. There's never really clear-cut results. And that's why I think it's best to look to what elites like Vlad are doing, see if there's any science that might support it, and then maybe experiment with it yourself to see how you respond to the training. And that's exactly what we're gonna get into once I get through this climb. Vlad's gonna give us all the advice on how us as amateurs, no matter what your level, can start to safely experiment with this kind of running training. All right, mate, good session. How was that?
It was good. Hard, but really good. I can already feel the improvements based on last time I did them, so that really excites me. But it's a hard workout, You've got to put a lot of effort into even just preparing to do it, and then physically doing the effort. It takes a bit of planning.
Yeah, I mean, just from my perspective, you've done a couple of these kind of workouts in this build, and today you definitely did look stronger and you were able to, move faster. There was a lot more running even in the later reps. Made the classic mistake of saying the last rep was easy, so now Vlad's gonna push harder on this one. So talk to me, if you're a beginner, and maybe you're not so well trained, you don't have a good strength training background. Obviously the first thing you want to do is, do a little bit of strength training, but how could you sort of start to incorporate a bit of this technique?
Yeah, for sure. I think, a really simple and effective way would be probably just to use a hydration vest with somewhere between up to 4 kilos maybe, just in water, a couple of bladders or a couple of soft flasks, and have a shorter hill, less steep hill, and just start with a couple of reps and see how the body responds. Still tip the water out at the top and come down, but yeah, progressively, built into these types of efforts.
And I guess there are also ways, if you're thinking, oh, well, maybe don't have access to water, I can dump out at the top. Maybe you can just make sure that you're really carefully hiking down, or even using poles to kind of cushion a bit of that impact on the way down.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's say you're a bit more like me, you're an intermediate runner, and you want to just take that next little percent and try and boost your climbing ability using this kind of stuff. What would you say for them?
Yeah, and there'd be a lot of runners in this position for sure. And I think taking somewhere between 6 and 8% of your body weight would be a really good place for somebody that's been training already. And obviously having a steeper hill and a longer hill, still maybe starting out with 2 or 3 efforts, but going for 10 minutes up, dumping the weight, or using poles on the way down and coming down carefully, and returning, and seeing how your body responds.
Yeah, I mean, you make a really good point there about seeing how your body responds, and I think the science isn't really clear cut, so it's really important for you to just see how your body responds. Treat it as a bit of an experiment on yourself. But yeah, let's talk about if you are a more advanced runner, you're already doing a lot of training. I want to ask, when should you fit these into your training block in coming into a big race? How many of them should you do? And yeah, what kind of percentage of body weight and weight are we looking at?
So I'm a perfect example, because at the moment I'm actually training for a 100-mile race in 4 weeks now. So 4 weeks out, I've done my second session, and I'm going to do 2 more in next week, making sure that I finish them before and still have 3 weeks to recover completely from them. But the next 2 that I'm going to be doing are less intense with less weight. So I've already done the peak bulk. These 2 were my key. So somewhere between 4 and 6 weeks out from your goal race, I think, is probably where you would be aiming to do this type of work. Keeping in mind that you're also trying to fit in your longest runs, which I generally do 5 to 7 weeks out from a miler, and that works very well. And yeah, as I said, I was 14 kilos, so that's, upwards of 10% of my body weight. And that worked really well for me.
And finally, mate, one thing I wanted to point out, obviously as I was coming up behind you on these reps today, you can see, you're carrying this pack that's got, 14 kilos of water in there. It's jiggling around. It doesn't look comfortable at all. And it got me thinking, obviously this is really great mental resilience as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's a really good point. It's people talk about mental strength and how you gain it, how you build it, how you practice it. This is a really good example of that. It's uncomfortable, it's difficult, it's more timely to do this type of workout, and it's obviously heavy and it's hurting. You can feel the burn in your muscles for the entire climb, but you can find a way to embrace that, and you can use it to your advantage by, as you said, realizing that you're doing this really effective extra work that the majority of people won't be doing, and that's going to give you a mental strength. Also, when I'm doing that, you're grinding up these hills which are taking almost 20 minutes to get up. You've got a lot of time to think about things, and I think about the race and being at different parts in the race, and be thinking okay, I'm now on the 3rd climb. I envisage myself in different positions within that race, so you can kind of if you're coming 4th or 5th, or you're not quite where I wanted to be, or if you're coming 1st, there's kind of different emotions that go along with that. But definitely getting in that zone and working through that and making sure that I feel strong and I absorb that helps me get ready for these races for sure.
That's great. I mean, I think visualizing different scenarios in the race while you're doing these climbs is definitely going to have a huge impact.
Yeah.
And one thing you said as well, I think is a really good point to make for everyone at home, because obviously as an amateur, I look at you doing this kind of work and I'm like, God, that seems like a lot of effort to go to. You've collected water from your rainwater tank, you're bringing it all the way out here, you're filling it up every rep, but that's the point, right? It's hard. And all of what we're doing here, with ultra running and stuff, we're doing things because they're hard, but you're making the effort to get this hard workout in, and it's gonna, build so much more resilience and really, leave you so much better off for that race.
And this is how you have to train when you're at a level like this, and I've been doing it for a long time, and so it's good to be able to share that with people.
All right, mate, well, thanks again. That's really great insight. Hope everyone out there also really found this helpful. I mean, this kind of training I think is one of those things that if it does work for you, it can be something that really can take your climbing to the next level. So, hope you found this helpful, and always appreciate your sage advice, mate. As always, got any questions, drop them below. We're always happy to answer them. But till next time, we've got a lot more content coming up about your build for Cozzy, and obviously we'll be covering that race. So keep watching, and enjoy your running.
Thanks, guys.